Warm welcome also from my side. Thank you to all of you to listen to this interesting discussion. As introduced, I'm Nimo Buschmann, responsible at Bitkom for defense and public security. The nation that leads in AI will be the ruler of the world. Does anyone know who said this and when? It was the president of the Russian Federation, Vladimir Putin, in 2017. I think this sets already the tone for this next discussion. There's still some voices that claim algorithms, algorithms and machine learning always have been there in military affairs, and this has been there for a long time, but others still say AI is a revolution in military affairs. This will be exactly our topic for the next 40 minutes, and I'm very happy to discuss this topic with my distinguished guest here today that I will now introduce on stage. Please welcome Colonel Frank Endler, Dr. Benjamin Tallis, and Dr. Alexander Zumdieck. Over there? Yeah. All right. Before we begin with this discussion, I would like to introduce my guest to you again. Colonel Frank Endler is head of the Digitalisation and AI unit in the Cyber Information Technology Department at the German Ministry of Defense. He has decades-long experience in the German Armed Forces, in-depth experience in leadership, strategy, and operational questions. Thank you to be here today with us. Dr. Alexander Zumdieck, right in the middle here, is CTO Technology Management Head of at the BWI GmbH, the IT service provider of the German Armed Forces, and responsible for the BWI Technology Center, AI and Cloud. He holds a doctorate in physics and has a long career, including the Metro AG and also the German Bundestag, where you were director of the topic of future of work, and thus have experience in the area of AI too from this workforce perspective. And finally, Benjamin Tallis, you are head of thought leadership at the company of Helsing, which is a company everyone sort of knows in the area of defense and technology today, and before that you've led the DGAP Action Group on Zeitenwende, a word I'm sure will be soon in the Oxford Dictionary next to kindergarten and Zeitgeist. And two, you have been a practitioner working in the field, spending a lot of time in Ukraine and Moldova too. So as an opening question sort of to all of you in this, on this topic of can AI fight, I would like to ask you, when was your moment, your sort of, did you have a specific event when you realized, okay, AI, this will be very important, a strategic enabling technology for the military as such, or for the German military specifically?
Yes. Well, thank you that I'm allowed to be here. And well, one moment you already mentioned, that was when Putin said this, and this time there were a lot of discussions. And there we decided in the Ministry of Defense to make actually a strategy on the usage of AI in the military forces, which was published in 2018. The moment I realized now it's getting hot, because if you look at innovation, if you look at subjects on innovation, you always have some subjects in the queue. But what is the subject which is getting now in front, which is now getting reality for everyone? And that was a moment when I heard on a digital convent the responsible for IT in the Ukraine, and they told what they had to do when the conflict started. They had to establish a situational awareness in the military with all the other branches of a government. So they made a project called a Delta, made sensor fusion, used AI to work on this one, and moved that in the cloud, and all this was done by their cyber innovation unit. And there I realized, okay, now it's the time. The concepts like multi-domain operations, they get reality, and we're on a good way, because it was a few years after we founded the Cyber Innovation Hub, and that was exciting for me, that in war, a unit like this wouldn't be disbanded like, okay, now it's done, we have to get on war. But no, it's decisive in this moment to get on innovation.
What are the views of the others? When were your key moments or events?
Sure. Good morning, everyone. Pleasure to be with you. So for me, there were two moments. One was before I joined Helsing, and one was after. Before joining Helsing, when I was working as a defense expert, I was looking into the revolution in military affairs that was proclaimed in the 1990s, you alluded to it, and why it had failed. And it's very interesting that even back in 1995, experts said the hardest thing about this revolution in military affairs, precision networked warfare, will be sensor and data fusion. When I started understanding what edge computing could do, powered by AI, and putting AI onto individual platforms, I think we can solve that problem. Because we no longer have to shovel all the data through the network, which crashed the network consistently. Now we can only send back the parts that we need. So this actually started to make me think we can actually realize the potential of that revolution in military affairs. We can realize the potential of network precision warfare. The second was when Helsing's Centaur AI agent, our AI fighter pilot, actually flew a real Saab Gripen in a beyond visual range combat simulation over the Baltic Sea earlier this year. So that's two different aspects, one conceptual and general, and one very specific and tangible in the steel.
Mr. Zumdieck, what's your view on this?
Yeah, good morning, and thanks for having me. So I think for me that was a two-stage process, because I have to admit that until 2019, I didn't think about war very much or external security, as that seemed just to have been a given. So I'm a physicist by training. I wrote my diploma thesis on a topic around neural networks in 2002. So you all realize that AI went through a profound winter after that. So that was very early. Nonetheless, I think I would claim that the importance of AI became clear, and 10 years later, we used it at Zalando to do better pricing for fashion. That's all fine. I only started to, think it together with defense when I started to work for BWI in 2019. And since then, it's been everywhere, and the Technology Center for AI is actually our largest technology center by manpower, given, of course, the high dynamics in the field at the moment. And all the facets you mentioned, the Gripen being flown by an agent and so on, I mean, all of that just adds to the, I don't think there's anybody now who would not, say that it's an important technology.
You all said that you discovered and explored this technology for a long time now. You saw the development in the field, and also you, Colonel Mr. Endler, you described AI as a key technology shaping the landscape of the 21st century in a recent Handelsblatt article. How has the Bundeswehr so far responded to this analysis, let's say?
Well, first of all, we had to improve ourselves on agility, on the possibility to react regarding providing AI capabilities like all IT capabilities. So we set up a new, we call digitalization platform. So what we get rid of these long plannings where you say, okay, in former times, maybe 3 years plus, we will come to a result. We shortened that a lot and worked on a strategy on this one. Regarding AI, we needed dedicated units who take care of the problem or who take care of the chances. So we have a dedicated competence center at the Center for Digitalisation, where I served also. And we have competence centers elsewhere for research and so on. So we set up a whole system, we make an analysis, and then we had to look at the capabilities to develop. And if you look at the military functions, which are reconnaissance, I think that's pretty obvious. You have like optical recognition, you have command, which is, I think, much more revolutionary because normally we don't command machines in this way, and we don't get accompanied by machines who will advise us, which will happen in the near future. And you have effects. And the new quality was something we call multi-domain operations, where we have to combine these three fields to be more fast than ever, which is called multi-domain operations. So this concept was developed by a lot of technical projects realizing capability in these fields. and getting them on our digitalization platform. This we are doing, well, at least since 2018-19. So now we're coming for the time to get all this delivered. And of course, this isn't restricted to the armed forces only, because this will change the whole life of society. So all the supporting functions, there I think we have pretty much the same subjects like everybody, like logistics and so on.
You mentioned some specific military use cases there too, recognition and also data fusion, let's say. Maybe this is a question to you, Mr. Tallis. Is this also something you see in other conflicts, in other elsewhere, let's say, than Germany, that those are the areas where AI is applied most today?
Sure, please call me Ben, totally
All
fine.
right.
We can be a little less formal. I wouldn't describe Germany as a conflict, but looking at live conflicts that we actually see in Ukraine, first and foremost, there are a number of transferable lessons we can draw, although we have to be careful about overlearning from Ukraine, because there's also some things that make the Ukraine conflict extremely specific and wouldn't relate to how NATO countries would like to fight, let's say. So I think the things I would really emphasize is we're seeing actually two overlapping revolutions, and Frank and I talked about this before. There's always a revolution in military affairs, but I think we've got two that we're dealing with at the moment. And one is the realization of this old vision. Bill Perry, sitting before Congress, 1977, says, the vision is to see any target on the battlefield, to hit any target we can see, and destroy any target we can hit. What we're now seeing with the sensor and data fusion that we're able to do, which is about having massed sensors, so different sensors coming from drones, different data coming from satellites, from reporting back in from various vehicles in the field, connected up to different shooters, as they're known, different effectors, you can actually realize that vision, and you can realize that vision at cost, because we're seeing the commodification of that precision network warfare revolution. That's why we're seeing cheap drones taking out expensive tanks when they're used en masse. So we're seeing that maturation of an old vision, but we're also seeing something new that's coming, and we don't know what shape it's going to take yet, which is why we have to be agile in our procurement, agile in our industry. And I think one of the trends that we can point to that is shaping this new emerging revolution is the shift to software-defined defense. Loosely put, this is to say defense has always been considered a hardware issue. Who can bend their steel in the best way? Who can make the most powerful shell? Who can put that in the most movable package, loosely speaking? But now we say at Helsing and elsewhere, defense is a software problem. Because in order for us to return to mass in this technologically evolved environment, we have to make very simple hardware that is mass producible from the ground up, that is very cheap, and that shifts all the complexity onto the software. So the hardware, such as strike drones, becomes basically a carrier for software plus an effector, like a warhead. What that means is you can produce lots of these things cheaply and fast, but also that you can update, because software updates much more easily than hardware. So I think that's one of the key trends I'd point to.
You said a lot of very important things there, but I want to highlight maybe one thing. You said speed and how to be fast, because we are talking also about readiness, right? And this alludes to the year of 2029, when supposedly Russia will be maybe ready to attack a NATO country or test a NATO country, and we have seen recently some of those things. So my question to you also maybe is, are we already fast enough in the application of AI, and how can we get faster there?
Well, what is fast enough? We have to be as fast as possible, but speaking in a room of a lot of people also producing AI, we know also that there is something, if you want to construct something, you need the time you need for that. So yes, we need to speed up, certainly, and I think we need to put more emphasis on the agility, on innovation, and on cyber. And I think therefore we have a lot of foundations laid, also conceptual. You just mentioned software-defined defense, which is one of the major concepts we developed the last 2 years. And that starts with a common mindset. And I think this common mindset we have achieved. I'm really happy to hear that, because that was a concept we started, I think, 2 or 3 years ago, and now it's common language. So what we're going to need now, of course, is a common foundation. And I think it's a mental common foundation, we will have to change the way we work together. At the moment, in German, it's Auftraggeber, Auftragnehmer. It's something like producer and supplier. And this is the old way of working together. I produce something, I hand it over. We see how things run, and then we come to the next iteration. And this has to change. We will have to find new words, because we have to have a constant delivery, we have to develop it together, and we have to develop also the common technical foundation. That's the work which is currently in progress. So I think we're making huge processes. And last example, let's look at the current restructuring of the Ministry of Defense. We will have a division. I'm now at Cyber and IT. I'll be at Innovation and Cyber. So our innovation ecosphere we created is somehow expanding, because we are now covering all of the area of capabilities.
You mentioned the way of how industry will be working together also with the public side of things. Maybe this is a good time to bring you in also in the discussion, Mr. Zumdieck. The BWI is sort of a key player in this regard because it brings together both sides as well. So what is your role in this? How do you see this?
Yeah, it's maybe important, not everybody might know that. So BWI is the captive IT provider to the German Armed Forces. So we are owned by the Federal Republic and have essentially just one client sitting to my left here. Hence we have somewhat of a special role as, right, we are very happy, and the Bundeswehr is very happy to work with many, many suppliers. However, when we approach key components such as enterprise architecture or orchestration platforms or something, then they normally turn to us because that's deemed critical, and then they want to have it in-house, and then of course we're considered in-house. So I think that's important to know. So it's not only by coincidence that I'm actually sitting between these two gentlemen, because also logically I'm actually sitting between, or BWI is sitting between these gentlemen, yeah? Yeah, I think that's the role we play, and then I think it contributes at both sides. Yeah? On the one hand, it's of course maybe a little bit easier for us to change the ways of working and build capabilities than fully governmental structures. Right? We have also legally a little bit more freedom, which we tend to use, and hence also then become a little bit. Which I say, more agile partners for industry, right? Mm-hmm. So that's, I think, being the glue or being the link is actually an important function.
Ben, you want to say?
Yeah, I do want to jump in, because that's two really important points that have been made there. One is the agile partner for industry side. Yes, industry moves fast. We know that. We also know it's more difficult to move fast in government. So it's been really, really important and very refreshing to see the changes that have happened in the last year in Germany. As a think tanker, before I joined Helsing, I was calling for a true Zeitenwende, an actual shifting going faster, going farther, to actually provide the defense and the geopolitical culture of which national administration is a part, that we need to deal with the geopolitical threat that we actually face. So it's been great to see actually a real shift in procurement cycles, in willingness to adopt incomplete technologies, in understanding there's a need to share risk with industry. So this is a very welcome shift. But your question was, are we going fast enough? The answer is no. And any military analyst will agree with you on that. We don't know when we could be attacked. We have to be ready. I mean, the US term, classic term, is fight tonight. Are we ready to fight tonight in the Baltics? The answer is no. How do we get ready as soon as we can to be able to not just defend against, but defeat a potential Russian attack within 2 to 3 years, while building up on the way to make sure that we are as capable as we can be at that particular moment? In doing so, how do we also make the changes, the deeper changes that will give us the agility, give us the competitive defense technological industrial base in order to be able to actually survive in the long-term geopolitical competition we're in? But crucially, there's another part that has to go fast. And again, we touched on this before, Frank. There has to be a change in the way that militaries actually approach this situation. Because I work for Helsing, but I'll be the first to tell you that technology doesn't bring military change. Technology brings the possibility of military change if you get your doctrine, your operational concept, your force structure, and your sustainment right. The only way to do that is to get the technology into the hands of militaries so they can experiment with it. We didn't work out until 1929 that aircraft carriers could be an offensive weapon. We'd had aircraft carriers since 1918. It takes experimenting, it takes wargaming, it takes training and testing. And the only way we will get that is if we actually start adopting new technology at scale.
You sort of alluded to that. The things that we see, for instance, in Ukraine too.
Yeah.
So you all observe the situation there very closely. So what are the applications of AI specifically where it helps the Ukrainian military to defend itself against the aggressor? What would you say, what is the most important area where it's used?
So in our experience working there, we actually tested our AI software in locally produced hardware for strike drones that can get through extreme electronic warfare, that can operate in GPS-denied, GNSS-denied environments. So actually being able to neutralize the Russians' advantage in electronic warfare, which we have to admit is real, and is something that we would have to degrade should we end up fighting against Russia. That has been one very specific tactical element to this. But what I would actually say is we've not seen either side in Ukraine using AI in a consistent way for command and control, for the ways that could actually coordinate and make use of the delegated decision-making that Ukraine has been very good at, this decentralized approach, but they haven't been able to concentrate it so much across the whole battlefront. And where I think AI can really play a role in our militaries is in linking command and control properly with reconnaissance strike. So seeing the target, hitting the target, together with actually a coordinated approach which would give us a more NATO way of fighting. Less decentralized, but not totally centralized like the Russian approach.
Maybe, Mr. Zumdieck, are those things you're working on with the BWR to integrate this faster into the use in the military?
For sure, and especially in technology management, the task is actually to build capabilities forward-looking, right? I mean, to look at the technological developments and then build capabilities to actually deal with technologies, so that, you know, should we be asked to deliver something, we actually then know already what to do instead of having to learn what to do when, you know, once the order actually comes in. Because despite all the acceleration, right? I mean, it's still we can only act once we have been formally tasked to act and are getting paid for it, right? That's part of the limited legal structure. So, you know, and all of that takes time to process. Hence, to get a little bit ahead of the curve and actually, you know, have an opinion on what people might be asking of us, and hence what we need to develop in terms of skills, as you know, what we do in that department. And of course, we look, you know, at what we can see from Ukraine very closely, as that's, you know, the real world example. But the, you know, I think, you know, there's nothing I can share that's not actually in the press, right? So, and there all the technologies, as in whatever swarm controls and you know, better recognition, robotics, visual eye. I mean, all of that is there also in other areas, not only the military, right? I mean, like, the reason why there's so much push now is because it's actually commercial technology as well. And so bringing that in is, you know, I think the contribution here.
Maybe to you, Mr. Endler, from your strategic perspective from the German MOD, I know that a lot of times it's also said we don't want to fight the war that we see in Ukraine. This is now our idea, right? How is AI applied to, let's say, the concepts of the German military for a potential conflict?
Well, the situation has been described perfectly. You know, you have a bottom-up approach with a lot of islands and initiatives where people are doing a lot of things with AI and technology. So what we already see that we have a shortened cycle from sensor to effector. And in the middle is a common operational picture. And I think by getting consistency in this common operational picture, so that you can synchronize your actions not only within military, but also with the other actors, that's the next big thing we are working on. And this concept is called in NATO multi-domain operations. Right. And but we have to be careful not to think it statically. We need, if you want to do that, if you want to use AI for doing the considerations, the judgment, to advise the military commander, you have to update constantly. So that's for what we need, software-defined defense. So you have a concept, multi-domain operations. You have a paradigm, this is software-defined defense, and you have a technology you have to apply for this one. So that's what we are working on right now. And the next new thing is, and the next big thing, of course, The Innovation Center, the German forces will establish at Erding, because there we will have to gain the experimentation capacities and the possibility to put things into the hands of the soldiers. And I think there's a common misunderstanding that a lot of people think that that money is the main constraint we have in this game. I think there are two constraints we have to look at. The one is mindset. We need an agile mindset. We need to know fight tonight. We really must be able to say, okay, what's possible now? And we need the mindset to gain experimentation and knowledge, which is data.
Yeah.
And we want to deter. We want to have escalation dominance. We don't want to get into the fight. To have that, we need information dominance. If we have this, we will be ahead of a curve. So we could show the other one, okay, we are able to escalate in effects better than you are. So we don't get into the fight, because our concept can't be to get in trenches. You know, that's a bloody way of fighting a war. I'm an army officer, and I don't want to have that. So therefore, we have to prepare. And that's the reason why I think that we are in the lucky situation we don't have war experience. We have operations experience, but the total war experience we don't have and we don't want to have. But we have to replace this by innovation speed and looking at the conflicts and getting the knowledge from there, and then adopt it via experimentation to our forces so that we have a strategic function of deterrence. That's what we there for, and this is a totally new strategic constellation we are in, which is, of course, historically known, but under different circumstances we have to master. It's not a long static thing about 20 years where everybody knows what's going to happen. You will press a button, it's going to be like this. We have to show this agility so that we can react on everything.
I think it's absolutely spot on, and we have to remember that the enemy gets a vote in this too. That's a key military lesson. Our enemies are set up deliberately to disintegrate and to penetrate our ways of fighting, to disable the reconnaissance strike complexes that we have created. And so this constant back and forth battle to actually get the upper hand, to get inside the OODA loop of the other, to actually make decisions faster than the other, to close the kill chain as it's known, from understanding to deciding to acting. That is what we have to master, which will rely on better data, it relies on better network, it relies on better compute, and it relies on better concepts to actually use the development in technology to fight better. Because as Frank said, as democracies, we do not want to fight in a brutal war of attrition. What we're seeing in Ukraine is a combination of World War I and World War III. We want to actually be able to restore maneuver. We want to actually be able to restore dominance, as you said, so we'd see something more like a combination of World War II and World War III, where there is actually a possibility to fight in a way that is acceptable for democracies, because we don't want to get into that human mass struggle that Russia is more than happy getting us down into.
We've now discussed basically the military side of the things. We have the concepts. We also have the operational picture, what is happening in Ukraine, let's say. We know how a software-defined defense, AI, and multi-domain operations are connected with each other. Another aspect of this is, of course, the industrial capacity, let's say, that will support all this, right? And luckily we have a company here on stage that is, let's say, one of the new players on the block here, and that is sort of representing a shift in this domain too. Question to you, what are the conditions that companies like Helsing, and there are many of them, need to flourish and to be there here in Europe too, to actually enable those capabilities and bring them to the armed forces?
So thank you. I mean, there's no company like Helsing. There are many other new defense companies, and we are very happy also to see that there are more and more rising new defense companies trying to do what we've done and become a neo-prime, as we would call it, in the defense market. Many of you will have heard our CEO, Gunbert Scherf, talking in the opening keynote yesterday. And he was very clear that we need to double down on our strength, on talent. And Helsing has been able to attract world-leading AI talent because of our mission. This is why we've been able to attract some of the leading AI talents from Meta, from Amazon, from Google, from elsewhere, because they care about the geopolitical moment they're in and want their talent to actually be used in service of the true task of our times, which is protecting democracies and seizing tech leadership in a geocompetitive and hostile world. But Gunbert also mentioned that we need proper infrastructure. We need a regulatory framework that actually fosters rather than hinders innovation. And we've heard about risk-taking culture already on the panel, and it's great to see that shift. But what I'd say is there's another element, and it ties into what I said earlier about getting technology into the hands of our militaries. What we need are contracts. That's not just because we want to sell things, we do, but actually this is how military innovation happens. Once we start experimenting, then we can start iterating the technology. We can start the spiral development between user and producer that will actually get us the technological advantage and technological edge we need. And to do that, we have to take new technologies out of the innovation corner and get them into programs of record. As long as we treat this as innovation, it's an optional extra, something nice to have. We have to understand that these technologies are the very backbone of Europe's security future. And if we start treating them like that, then we will have a chance to actually not only develop the defense industrial base we need, but more importantly, to develop the deterrence that we need.
Now we've heard sort of the pitch of you for why Helsing is so important for the new industrial complex, let's say. But maybe to dig deeper a little bit on how the ways of cooperation will unfold in the next years. Can you give us some concrete steps that will happen in such as the Innovation Center, also together with new players, with the old primes in the next years, how this mindset sort of will operationalize in the future?
Well, one important step has been announced to found the new Innovation Center. And just let's get back in history. Where were we 6 years ago? We had a startup scene, and we had a, well, what's the English one for Amt? Maybe we have to put this in the Oxford dictionary too, but I think everybody knows what we mean. And therefore, we had to establish something, and we called an innovation ecosystem. And I think that's important too, because if we minimize innovation to the gap between research and development, and say, okay, that's something else, then this won't work. What we established in the German forces for the cyber IT area was that we make an ecosphere where all these elements playing together as instruments, so you can also invest long-term with a cyber agency, saying, okay, we have some technologies which are far away, and can somehow hand them over to the chain where we finally arrive at the startup, and the startup knows where to go to. So this we have set up with a Cyber Innovation Hub, and we have, I think, brilliant experiences with that, because the most important thing is the one side is the startup, which has a technical idea most of the time, but the other side is the armed forces who have operational ideas. And when we made the challenges, the innovation challenges, we got hundreds of ideas to evaluate, and we could get a lot of good operational ideas out of this, so that we could get together the startup scene with those. And like you said, now we need to scale it. You know, that's a usual thing in an agile thing. So I think the next big thing will be the Innovation Center, so that we are getting rid of this limitation of this approach to cyber IT, but to have it for the whole for the whole area. And then, of course, the next one is, of course, procurement, because we have to now we have to say, okay, what's going to be at our sensor data fusion system? And once we know it, we have to choose our partners, and then establish a new way of working together, defining the foundation on the technical side, on the mindset side, on the procedural side, and actually getting started with software-defined defense. And this is on its way. And yeah, I guess the next steps will be to work together on these themes, these subjects.
Can I just jump in on the idea that innovation, I think, crucially needs not only be confined to the innovation area or innovation elements, the Cyber Innovation Hub or something, but should actually happen across the board. Exactly. And that's, I think, an important mindset, that you alluded to earlier. Because we're very much in the thing of like, oh, we've ordered this. Let's, 5 years later, when it's delivered, order that, make sure it's really that what we ordered that's delivered. although maybe in meantime the world has turned a few times, and actually what we ordered 5 years ago we don't need today anymore, but we don't give ourselves the flexibility to then say like, fantastic, you've delivered something we need, so let's call this a win, but we'd rather say like, oh, you didn't order what we needed, or you didn't deliver what we ordered, hence you now have a problem, and that's of course no way to work with industry in an agile way, I think, and that's something that I think we need to grow in our system to, make sure that innovation is not only happening with the, I don't know, the guys, who sit on beanie bags and have the orange walls and are belittled by everybody else, but it's actually a task that should, pervade the system. Exactly. I think that's the important thing. And I mean, the other thing, probably where we could also be a little bit more clear is in demonstrating the will to do it. I mean, and that probably goes to all of us, because as a society, we still build 10,000 cars a day, but not one tank. Now we can debate the usefulness of tank in modern warfare, and I'm no expert, but I mean, the relation is striking, given that we're talking about Zeitenwende and extra money and all that kind of stuff. So, and I think that, there's a couple of things that are not only confined to some innovation unit somewhere, but need to be happening across the board. And
I think we've touched now on a lot of very important things. And now that you said also, okay, we have to still double down on the mindset there. But maybe as a last round here now too, what is one common misperception maybe about AI that you want to clear up with as a last sort of round we have here on stage?
Well, one misconception may be that people think AI is something technically and isolated.
Especially in the military affair domain, maybe.
Okay. Well, one misunderstanding I see often is that we don't have the capacities to do AI, that this would be something which must be external and which is very hard to do. I've met on our AI summit hundreds of young officers and professionals who are working in AI and who want to use it and who want to get into this ecosphere. And I see the same in on the industrial side. So I think we shouldn't think that this is very hard to do and we need a lot of years to put up the workforce. I think we are able to do it and we can achieve it together, so we should do it.
So I think that's absolutely right, but it's important to also add that there's a common perception, including perhaps in some legacy parts of the defense industry, that AI is something you can simply add on to existing technologies. And there are some applications where that may be the case. But if we're actually going to undertake this transformative shift in how we fight and how we understand the role of data and understand the role of intelligent machines within our militaries, then that's not something you can just add on. And so if you're a traditional hardware maker who's very good at making defense hardware, it's going to be difficult because you're not designing for software, you're not designing for AI. And I think that has also contributed to this problem we've heard about long production runs, long cycles. We're not going to get into the tanks debate today, but we do still need tanks, just perhaps simpler ones, I would say, as my one intervention into that. But you have to really invest in AI if you're going to do AI in defense. And I mean, Helsing has come under a lot of scrutiny. I wish that scrutiny would be applied to every company in the defense industry, I have to say. But what we've been able to show is that by actually focusing on AI, by investing the money that is needed to do that in the talent, but also investing in the compute and investing in the simulative environments that you need to train AI agents, you can make a difference. One very good example of this is that AI fighter pilot that flew a real live Saab Gripen in May this year. That project was conceived on September the 1st, 2024. So within 9 months, going from an idea to a simulative combat agent that could fly against a pilot in a simulator to flying an actual plane in the sky, being able to provide fire controls and directional movement of the airplane. That is what happens if you invest in AI. It was possible to do it with the Saab Gripen because of Saab's open architecture that you can use there. That's an example of where hardware is designed to be integrated with software. That's the kind of thing we have to move. So I think addressing this, that AI is an optional extra and an add-on, has to be one of the big issues for us.
I totally agree. And then, I mean, you ask about misconceptions. I think I would name two. One is there seems to be this idea that you can simply use AI models from this civil domain and then use them in a military context. we think this is very, very likely to go very, very wrong. And the other thing is that there very quickly tends to develop a belief that AI knows an answer or something, and we stop asking the right questions and second-guessing AI, right, in the amount that we should. I mean, AI, as of today, only gives you the most probable answer. There is not really an insight above and beyond probability, and so that can be right, but that always gives you the main stretch, right? So.
Well, thank you to all of you for joining me in this discussion, and I hope we could clear up some of the misconceptions of AI in military affairs, but also make some strong points here for the use and for the investment in it. And this gives me some hope that we are on the right track and also move fast enough, and we can accelerate too there. So happy again, and thank you again for having you here on stage. And I think I hand over the word after this discussion. Thank you.